Mark and I had been married for almost 5 years. We weren't perfect, but we were trying. At least, I thought we were. Our days had become a quiet rhythm of work, chores, and routine conversations. The kind of marriage where love was still there, just buried beneath exhaustion and unspoken words. He worked long hours, came home late, and spent most evenings scrolling through his phone. I tried to keep things warm, cooking his favorite meals, leaving small notes in his lunchbox, reminding him about our anniversary. He'd always smile and say, "You don't have to do all that, you know." But deep inside, I just wanted him to notice that I still cared. I thought maybe our 5th anniversary could bring some spark back, so I planned a dinner, a quiet one, just the two of us, the same restaurant where he had proposed to me 5 years earlier. I booked the table 2 weeks early, even asked the manager to keep our favorite corner seat. That morning, I was getting ready for work when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. "Hey babe, don't freak out, but I invited someone to dinner with us tonight. You'll be okay with it." I frowned. Someone? Who would he invite to our anniversary dinner? Then another message came. "It's just Lisa. You remember her, my ex. She's in town for a few days. I thought it'd be nice to catch up." For a second, I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. Lisa, his ex. The woman whose name I'd heard too many times in our early years, the one his friends still mention sometimes with a laugh. I wanted to scream, "Are you out of your mind?" But instead, I typed nothing. I just sat there, staring at his message, feeling a strange mix of disbelief and hurt. He must have noticed my silence, because a few minutes later he called. His voice was cheerful, casual, as if this was no big deal. "Hey, you're not mad, right? I just thought it'd be nice, no hard feelings from the past. We're all adults." Adults. That word hit harder than he realized. Because yes, adults hide their pain behind polite smiles. I said softly, "Sure, Mark, whatever you want." He paused, sensing something in my tone, but didn't push further. That evening, I put on a black dress, the same one I wore the night he proposed to me. I looked in the mirror and smiled at my reflection, though my heart wasn't smiling back. At the restaurant, Lisa was already there, waving happily like we were old friends. She was beautiful, effortlessly elegant, with the same easy confidence I remembered from the few times I'd met her. Mark hugged her lightly. "Lisa, you remember my wife, right?" She smiled at me. "Of course! Wow, you're even prettier in person. Mark always had good taste." I smiled politely. "Thank you." Inside, my stomach turned. Dinner started with harmless talk, memories from college, funny stories, old trips. I sat there, listening, pretending to laugh when they did, but every time she said, "Remember when you used to," my chest tightened a little more. Halfway through the meal, Lisa leaned forward and said, Mark, I still remember how you used to call me every night just to say goodnight. You were so sweet back then." He laughed softly. "Yeah, I was a bit of a romantic." I put my fork down and smiled. I said quietly, "He still is. He still calls me from the kitchen every night to ask if I want tea before bed. Love changes, but maybe it's supposed to." The table went silent. Lisa smiled faintly, her eyes falling to her plate. Mark looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time that evening, I saw something in his eyes that had been missing for a long time. When Lisa left, she hugged him politely and shook my hand with a small smile. "It was nice seeing you both," she said softly. As soon as she was gone, the silence between us felt heavier. In the car, Mark didn't start the engine right away. He just said quietly, "I'm sorry. I didn't think it would make you feel that way." I looked out the window, my voice calm. "You didn't have to think, Mark. You just had to remember that tonight was supposed to be about us." He didn't speak after that. When we got home, he made me tea. He added sugar, just the way I like it, and somehow that small act said more than any apology ever could. That night, as we lay in bed, I wondered, was this just another small misunderstanding, or the first crack in something we thought was unbreakable?
The days after that dinner felt strange. Not exactly cold, but not warm either. Mark was trying, that much I could tell. He started helping more around the house, leaving early from work, even texting me random "I miss you" messages during the day. For a while, I let myself believe things were changing. Maybe that dinner wasn't a mistake after all. Maybe it reminded him how far we'd come, how much we'd built together. But sometimes, when he smiled at me, there was a flicker of guilt in his eyes. Quick, faint, but there. I tried to ignore it. I told myself, he's just tired, he's just stressed. Until that one night. He had fallen asleep on the couch, his head resting on one side, the TV still playing softly in the background. I was cleaning up the coffee table when his phone buzzed. It wasn't unusual. His phone was always busy, filled with office calls, group chats, and random notifications. But that night, the screen lit up with a name I never wanted to see again. Lisa. My hand froze midair. The preview flashed for a few seconds before fading. I know I shouldn't text you, but I can't stop thinking about that night. For a moment, I felt the world tilt. My chest tightened, my breathing slowed. I told myself not to open it. Don't look. Trust him. You promised yourself you wouldn't snoop. But the thought kept echoing in my mind. What if there's more? I picked up his phone. The lock screen opened with his thumbprint. He never hid it. I opened the chat. Lisa. You looked happy, but your eyes said something else. I missed how we used to talk. Just one coffee, for closure. And then his reply, sent earlier that morning. You're right. Maybe closure would help, but I can't let her know. Her. Me. My heart broke quietly, not in a loud, cinematic way, no tears, no dramatic collapse, just silence. A sharp, still silence that said everything words couldn't. I put the phone down gently and looked at him, sleeping peacefully, unaware that his world was about to change. For the first time in years, I didn't feel love. I felt nothing. The next morning, I woke up before him, made breakfast, like always, smiled, like always, pretended, like always. He noticed something different, though. He said, "You're quiet today." I smiled faintly, just tired. He nodded, kissed my forehead, and left for work. And that's when I made a decision. Not to confront him, not yet. Because sometimes silence tells more truth than arguments ever will. That evening, I suggested something. "Hey," I said casually, "let's go out tomorrow. Just you and me. Maybe dinner." He hesitated for half a second before nodding. "Sure, that sounds nice." But I already knew. Tomorrow, he had plans with her. The next day, he left around 5 p.m. saying he had an office meeting. He kissed me goodbye and promised, "Don't wait up, I might be late." I smiled and said, "It's okay, I trust you." He smiled back, and for a moment, I almost believed it myself. But as soon as he left, I grabbed my keys. I wasn't planning to catch him in the act. I just needed to see. I drove quietly, following the road to the city center. My heart wasn't racing. It was too tired for that. When I reached the small cafe near the park, I didn't even have to look around. I saw them instantly. Sitting together,
her hair tucked behind her ear, his hand resting on the table, too close to hers, both smiling like two people sharing a secret they shouldn't. For a moment, I just stood there, watching, trying to memorize what betrayal really looked like. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel. It was calm, almost gentle. Two people pretending it was harmless when it wasn't. I didn't go inside. I didn't make a scene. I just turned around and walked away. That night, when he came home, I was waiting at the table. Dinner was ready. He smiled, said, "Long day," and sat down. I handed him his plate and said softly, "You must be tired. It's hard work keeping up with old friends." His fork stopped midair. Our eyes met. And in that look, no yelling, no words, he knew. He knew I had seen him. I didn't say anything else. I just stood up, went to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. Behind me, he whispered, almost broken, "I can explain." I didn't turn around. "Don't," I said. "You'll only make it worse." That night, we didn't speak. We slept side by side, miles apart. And as I stared at the ceiling, I realized something. Maybe love doesn't end when someone cheats. Maybe it ends when trust becomes a memory.
The morning after that silent night felt heavier than any storm. The air between us was still, thick with the things we hadn't said. Mark moved quietly around the kitchen, pretending everything was normal, pouring coffee, checking his phone, humming softly like he always did. But his eyes avoided mine. I watched him for a long time. The man who once made me laugh so easily now looked like a stranger trying to act familiar. When he turned to leave for work, I finally spoke. "Mark?" He froze. "Sit down," I said quietly. He hesitated, then sat at the table. His hands fidgeted, his eyes lowered. I placed my phone in front of him, the screen open to the photo I'd taken yesterday, the photo of him and Lisa, sitting at that cafe. No words, no captions, just truth. He went pale. "I can explain." "Don't," I cut him off. "You've already said that." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Finally, he whispered, "It wasn't what you think." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe he was still trying to defend it. "You were with your ex on the day you told me you had a meeting, Mark. What else could it be?" He ran a hand through his hair, sighing deeply. "She reached out, okay? She said she wanted closure. I didn't plan for it to mean anything." "Closure," I said bitterly. "And what exactly did you need to close, Mark? Because I thought you closed that chapter when you married me." He looked up, eyes red and tired. "I don't know," he said softly. "I just wanted to know why I never felt fully over it. Maybe I thought seeing her would help me realize I moved on." My throat tightened. "And did it?" He swallowed hard. "Yes, because when I saw her, I realized the person I should have been fighting for was sitting at home waiting for me." For a moment, his voice cracked. Raw, honest, almost believable. But part of me was too broken to feel relief. "You didn't fight for me, Mark. You lied to me. You made me doubt everything we built together. Do you have any idea what that does to someone?" He leaned forward now, desperate. "I know I messed up, but I didn't cheat. I swear to you.
Nothing happened. Please, don't walk away from me. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I'd spent too many years crying for smaller things. This time, I wanted to be still, strong, calm. I said I'm not walking away, I said, standing up. But I am walking out. For a while. He looked stunned. Where will you go? I don't know, I said. Maybe somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can remember what peace feels like. He stood too, reaching for my hand, but I stepped back. You've said enough, I whispered. Now I need to figure out if there's anything left to save. That evening, I packed a small bag, just clothes, my journal, and the necklace my mother gave me when I got married. When I reached the door, Mark was standing there, silent. He didn't beg me to stay. He just said, I'll wait, no matter how long it takes. I looked at him for one last time, the man I loved, the man who broke me, and said, then use that time to become someone worth waiting for. I drove away without looking back. The road was long and quiet, the city lights fading in the mirror. For the first time in years, I didn't feel lost. I felt free. Free from pretending everything was fine. Free from trying to be enough for someone who forgot my worth. That night, I stayed at a small motel on the edge of town. I sat by the window, staring at the stars, wondering when love had become so complicated. Maybe real love wasn't about never hurting each other. Maybe it was about learning when to stop accepting hurt as normal. And as the night deepened, one truth settled in my heart. Sometimes, walking away isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of self-respect. It had been 26 days since I left home. 26 mornings without hearing Mark's voice, without the sound of his keys jangling at the door, without the quiet goodnight we used to exchange out of habit more than love. The small apartment I rented was simple. One bedroom, a small balcony, and a view of the city that looked peaceful from far away. In that quiet space, I began to breathe again. No tension, no pretending, just me, my thoughts, and the weight of what I had walked away from. At first, I thought the silence would destroy me, but as the days passed, I realized something strange. The silence was healing me. I started waking up early again, cooking for myself, reading old books I hadn't touched in years. I even laughed, really laughed, with my sister on the phone one night, something I hadn't done in months. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't someone's wife trying to hold everything together. I was just me. Mark called every day for the first week. I didn't answer. He left voicemails, soft, broken ones. I know you hate me right now. I don't want to lose you like this. Please, just tell me you're okay. But after a while, the call stopped, and that silence hurt in a different way. I told myself it was better this way. If he stopped calling, maybe it meant he was moving on, and maybe I should too. But sometimes, late at night, I'd still check my phone. No new messages. That's when the loneliness crept in. Quiet, but heavy. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the window, I got a message. It was from him. I finally understand what you meant. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening it. The message continued. I thought I just made a mistake, but now I know it wasn't just a mistake. It was years of taking you for granted. Every morning I woke up to your love and assumed it would always be there. I'm not asking you to come back. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Truly sorry for every time I made you feel invisible. For the first time since I left, I cried. Not out of anger, but out of release. He didn't beg. He didn't defend himself. He simply understood. And that, somehow, hurt the most. A week later, he sent a letter. A real, handwritten letter. It smelled faintly of his cologne, the one I used to love. It said, "I'm fixing the things I broke, even the ones you can't see. I started therapy. I've been talking to my mother again. I'm learning how to listen, not just hear. You don't owe me another chance, but I owe you a better man than the one you married." I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in my drawer. I didn't know what to feel. Forgiveness, anger, love, or loss. Maybe all of it. Days passed. Life went on. Quietly, gently. Then one afternoon, I went back to the old house. Not to return, just to pick up a few things. He wasn't home. But the living room looked different. The table was cleaner. Our wedding photo, the one he once kept turned around, was standing upright again. And next to it, a small note. "Whether you ever come back or not, this house will always be your home." That night, as I drove back to my apartment, I realized something important. Forgiveness doesn't always mean going back. Sometimes it means letting go of the anger so it doesn't poison what's left of your heart. I wasn't ready to forgive him yet, but for the first time, I wasn't angry anymore. And maybe that was the first step. A month had passed since Mark's letter. I hadn't replied. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to say. Forgiveness felt like a heavy door. It wasn't locked, but I wasn't ready to open it yet. One Sunday morning, I found myself driving with no destination. The streets were half asleep, the city washed in soft sunlight. Without planning it, my car turned down the old road that led to our house. I parked across the street and just looked at it. Same porch light, same curtains I'd chosen years ago. And then the front door opened. Mark stepped out, holding a mug of coffee, hair messy, wearing the same gray hoodie I'd bought him last winter. He froze when he saw me. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he walked slowly toward the gate and said, almost in a whisper, "You came." I nodded. I didn't mean to. He smiled sadly. That's how most important things happen, without meaning to. We stood there, the distance between us filled with everything we hadn't said. Finally, he asked, "Would you like to come in? Just for coffee?" I hesitated. Every memory of pain flashed through me. The dinner, the messages, the silence. But so did the small things. Our laughter, our long drives, the way he always reached for my hand in crowded places. So I said quietly, "Just coffee." Inside, the house felt different, calmer. There were small plants near the window, a framed quote on the wall that read, "Do better, be kinder." On the dining table sat another letter, half written, addressed to me. He noticed my eyes linger and said softly, "I write to you every night. I never send them. It just helps me think before I speak." We sat across from each other, cups steaming between us. For a while, we just talked. Not about the past, not about blame, about small things. Work, the weather, the neighbor's new dog. It felt normal, almost peaceful. Then he said, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want to show you that I'm changing. Not for you, but because I finally see what I became." His voice trembled slightly. "You don't owe me another chance, but I hope one day you'll see that I'm trying to deserve one." I looked at him, really looked at him. The guilt was still there, but so was something new: humility. And that, more than his apology, made me believe him. When I left that afternoon, he didn't ask me to stay. He just walked me to the door and said, "Take all the time you need. I'll be here, whether that means waiting or letting go." I nodded. "I don't know what I want yet." He smiled gently. "That's okay. At least now we're honest." That night, back in my apartment, I finally opened the drawer where I'd kept his first letter. I unfolded it and placed a small note of my own inside. "Some doors shouldn't stay closed forever. I'm not ready to come home, but maybe I'm ready to visit again." Then I sealed the envelope and addressed it to him. The first time I saw Mark after sending that letter, it was at a small cafe near the river, the same place where we used to meet before we were married. I arrived early. The air smelled of roasted coffee and rain on pavement. My heart raced the way it used to on our first dates, nervous, unsure, hopeful. When he walked in, he didn't rush to me. He paused at the door, searching my face, almost asking for permission just to approach. I nodded slightly. He smiled, that quiet, respectful kind of smile that says, "I don't want to break this moment." We sat by the window, sipping coffee that had gone cold long before our conversation did. We didn't talk about the past, not yet. We talked about now. How he had started cooking for himself, how I had joined a yoga class, how both of us had learned that being alone isn't the same as being lonely. Every word felt like we were slowly rebuilding a bridge, plank by plank, truth by truth. Then he said softly, "I never realized how much silence can teach you until I lost yours." I looked up. He wasn't trying to charm me. He wasn't performing regret. He meant it in that quiet, grown-up way that only pain can teach. After that day, we started meeting once a week. Sometimes we'd walk in the park. Sometimes we'd just sit in the car and listen to old songs. It wasn't like before. There were no hugs, no hand-holding, but there was something even more powerful between us now: respect. He didn't try to fix me anymore, and I didn't try to read his mind. We just talked, listened, learned each other again, slowly, like strangers meeting for the second time. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, I asked him, "Do you ever think we'll go back to how we were?" He smiled faintly. "I don't want to go back. I want us to become something better than what we were." That answer sat quietly in my chest for days. Because maybe he was right. Maybe love isn't about returning. Maybe it's about evolving. Weeks passed, and our rhythm became easy, honest. He never pressured me to come home, but one night, after a late dinner, he walked me to my car and said, "I still keep your side of the bed warm." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You don't have to." He said, looking away, "I know, but I want to. It reminds me that some spaces are worth waiting for." That night when I got home, I realized something had changed. Not between us, but within me. I didn't feel anger anymore, and I didn't feel the ache of betrayal every time I saw his face. Instead, I felt peace. Quiet, fragile, but real. A few days later, I went back to our old house again, this time without warning. When he opened the door, he looked surprised. "Hey," he said, softly. "Hey," I replied. "I brought dinner." We sat down together, sharing food and quiet laughter. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like we were fixing something broken. It felt like we were building something new. It had been almost 6 months since I left home. 6 months of separate mornings, separate lives, and slow, careful conversations. But that night, the one that changed everything, started quietly. Just a text from Mark. "Can we talk?" Not about the past, about what's next. Something about those words felt different. Not desperate, not guilty, just steady. So I said yes. We met at the old lake near our first apartment, the place where he'd proposed to me 8 years ago. It was evening. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gray. The water shimmered with the last light of day. When I got there, he was already waiting. Hands in pockets, eyes tired but kind. For a moment, I saw the man I'd fallen in love with. The one who laughed too loud, who held my hand even when it wasn't needed, who made me feel like he was my whole world. And then I saw the man he'd become. Quieter, humbler, more careful with his words. Both versions stood in front of me, and both were real. "You look good," he said softly. "So do you," I replied, though part of me still remembered the night I walked out, the tears, the silence, the sharp ache of betrayal. He nodded toward the bench by the water. "Sit with me?" We sat. The world was quiet, except for the wind brushing the surface of the lake. After a long pause, he spoke. "I've spent months trying to figure out if I deserve to ask you to come home. And I don't know if anyone ever deserves forgiveness, but I finally understand it's not something you earn, it's something you grow into." I looked at him, unsure what to say. His eyes glistened, but his voice didn't shake. A full year had slipped by since that evening at the lake. Seasons had come and gone, carrying bits of the pain with them until what remained was a soft ache, not the kind that breaks you, but the kind that reminds you that you once cared deeply. I moved to a small coastal town 3 hours away. I started teaching again, something I'd given up years ago because marriage and responsibility had swallowed the time. My apartment overlooked the sea. Every morning I'd open the curtains and breathe in the salt air, a reminder that I could begin again. The mornings were peaceful, no more hurried breakfasts or tense silences, just me, a cup of tea, and the sound of the ocean, reminding me that healing isn't loud. It's steady, like waves touching the same shore again and again. A different kind of life. I learned to enjoy my own company. I cooked simple meals, took long walks, joined a book club where nobody knew my story. And slowly, people stopped asking, "Are you okay?" Because I was. Sometimes, though, late at night, I'd catch myself wondering what Mark was doing, whether he ever looked for me online, whether he still kept the porch light on like he promised. I never called. Not because I didn't want to, but because I finally respected the distance we'd built. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. The handwriting was unmistakable. "I hope you don't mind me writing. I heard from your sister that you moved near the sea. I wanted to say thank you, not for forgiving me, but for teaching me how to become a man worth forgiving." He wrote about his life, how he'd kept going to therapy, how he'd started volunteering at a youth center, how he'd learned to cook properly, no more burnt toast. At the end he wrote, "If you ever find yourself near the city again, there's a new cafe by the lake. The light inside is warm. You once said every love deserves a softer ending. Maybe this is ours. I read it 3 times. Then I smiled, folded it carefully, and tucked it inside my journal. I didn't cry this time. Just felt peace. Returning. Months later, on a sunny spring weekend, I went back to the city for a school conference. I hadn't planned to see him, but as I walked along the lake, I saw the cafe he'd mentioned. Small, cozy, with lights glowing through the window like the world's gentlest heartbeat. And there he was, behind the counter, pouring coffee, laughing with a customer. He looked different, calmer, grounded, free of the weight he used to carry. When he looked up and saw me, time seemed to fold. He didn't rush out. He simply smiled, the kind of smile that says, "You don't owe me anything." I walked in. "Coffee?" he asked softly. "Only if it's not burnt," I teased. We both laughed, a sound that felt familiar but new. The conversation. We talked for hours after closing time, about his cafe, about my students, about the year we'd spent apart and the strange peace that came with it. I admitted, I thought distance would erase love. It didn't. It just changed its shape. He nodded. Maybe that's what real love does. It bends, it breathes, it doesn't disappear, it learns how to live differently. There were no grand gestures, no confessions, no tears, just 2 people sitting across from each other, both finally whole. When I stood to leave, he walked me to the door like he always used to. Outside, the night air was cool. "So, do I keep the porch light on?" he asked. I looked up at him, smiled. "Maybe keep it dim. Just enough so we can find our way if we ever need to." He laughed gently. "Deal." Full circle. That night, as I drove back to my hotel, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace without sadness. We hadn't gone back to being husband and wife. We'd become something rarer. 2 souls who had outgrown the pain and met again as equals. Later, lying in bed, I whispered to the quiet room, "We made it in our own way." And I realized that sometimes love stories don't need perfect endings. They just need truth, the kind that survives distance, time, and silence.